A reading from the Gospel of Matthew. Would you please stand? You are the salt of the earth, but if salt has lost its taste, how can its saltiness be restored? It is no longer good for anything, but is thrown out and trampled underfoot. You are the light of the world. A city built on a hill cannot be hid. People do not light a lamp and put it under the bushel basket. Rather, they put it on a lampstand, and it gives light to all in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, so that they may see your good works and give glory to your Father in heaven. Do not think that I have come to abolish the law or the prophets. I have come not to abolish, but to fulfill. For truly I tell you, until heaven and earth pass away, not one letter, not one stroke of a letter will pass from the law until all is accomplished. Therefore, whoever breaks one of the least of these commandments and teaches others to do the same will be called least in the kingdom of heaven. But whoever does them and teaches them will be called great in the kingdom of heaven. For I tell you, unless your righteousness exceeds that of the scribes and Pharisees, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven. This is the word of the Lord.
Praise be to God. If you want the best fried chicken, chicken fried steak, fried pork chops, or even hot water cornbread, you need one of these. Now, I know I probably should have titled this sermon High Blood Pressure after naming all of that. And for many of you who love and adore your cast iron skillet, you already know what I'm about to say and how I'm going to do this introduction of this sermon. So this is for those young folk who watched Joanna Gaines put it on the shelf one day and never took it down. So I need you to do this. Ithaca, if you're watching on your retreat, I need you to grab your cast iron skillet. Y'all see this? And we're going to clean it. But the best way to clean your skillet is not to use soap and water, but if you want to extend the life, if you want to keep it seasoned, you need salt. Salt. So you take and pour in about a tablespoon of coarse salt, and you get a good rag and you begin to scrub. Scrub and scrub so that all of the bits and pieces and the residue, the things that are not supposed to be within it, will come off. But also, while you are cleaning and purifying this, the salt also gets inside the crevices so that when it is time to cook again, the food is constantly being seasoned and seasoned all from the pot, all from the skillet because of the way it was cleaned, because of the way it was purified. Most of us take salt for granted. For centuries, salt was a rare commodity used for payment. We've seen wars in history happen over salt. Salt was used to preserve, even measured a person's integrity, hence the saying, are they worth their salt? It kept entire civilizations alive to prevent bacteria-laden diseases from happening. And Jesus takes this thing that's coarse, that purifies, that cleanses, that preserves, that spices up one's life and says, this is you, my followers. You are salt of the earth. Now, let me remind you of the Gospel of Matthew's premise. Matthew is constantly reminding us of who Jesus is. That Jesus is not some American Christian walking through Galilee, oohing and awing at everything that he sees. But he includes the texts that have formed Jesus and informed the audience that are reading this gospel. So when something is quoted or the reader who has been embedded in the Torah begins to question what Jesus is doing, Matthew can say, whoa, 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 I got that covered. This lens to see Jesus not as someone who does not know the law, but someone who has studied it and lived by it. So the phrase in Matthew 5, I have come to not to abolish the law, but fulfill it, is important. 16 times Matthew uses the term fulfill with regards to the Hebrew Bible, with regards to the law. And you might be thinking, there are multiple times that Jesus has broken the law that we've seen in the Gospels. But scholars suggest that Jesus never contradicted written tradition. He only contradicted oral tradition from the Pharisees, though his words do go beyond anything at times what Moses even said. So how do we hold these two things in hand? The Torah and law and the words of Jesus. How do we hold these things without one superseding the other? And how do we hold them knowing that the two work together? So follow me just for a bit. The law focuses on many aspects, but there are three main themes that we see in the Torah. Sin, falling further away from God, relationship between God and humanity, and hospitality to all. And often when we see that these three things, or one of the three, have been broken, this is when repentance is asked of the Israelites. Yet, law was so ingrained in their minds that by breaking the law meant that they broke God's covenant. What we saw last week with the text in Micah. And so as time went on, there began to be different denominations, if you will, different sects of Jews that were created. And in a time and culture where religion and politics were never separated, it led to multiple questions. Who is God in this moment? What do we do with God? What do we do with Torah law? What do we do with law created by Caesar? How are we supposed to act with Caesar? What do we do? And to each of these questions, different factions of first century Jews were created. The Sadducees believed in coming together, collaborating with the occupier. The Zealots believed in taking their weapons and fighting the empire. Yet the Pharisees were broken in two groups. One, they decided to take their swords and fight. And the other group, that they picked up everything that they had and moved to a different side of town that was just for them to live in their ways, their rules, their laws, with their people. And yet none of these ways were okay with Jesus. It wasn't the sword, because Jesus said, "Love ye one another." And it wasn't the way of the Pharisees, as much as Jesus throws some shade on them all throughout the Gospels. The thing was, the Pharisees were working on an outdated interpretation of Israel's situation. They assumed that the fulfillment of God's kingdom, the fulfillment of eschatology, was something to be had in the future, that God's reign had not begun. They read the Torah governed by a world of sin and a world of who's in and who's out. But Jesus read the Torah no longer in this context, but in the context of kingdom living and the behavior that goes along with it. No longer was it about human narrow-mindedness, but the context was on the abundance of God's righteousness, God's grace, God's mercy, God's love. Abundance became key to kingdom living. So when Jesus says that I have come to fulfill the law, what he meant is that I've come to literally be the word, the law, the Torah, the writing, the prophets. I am literally it. I have put it on skin to these words. I have given organs to these statements and these passages. I have given soul and heartbeat. I have picked it up and I am walking with it. It is in me. And what I ask of you as followers is to put skin on it too. That you too take all that is accompanied, live it, be it, breathe it. Because it cannot be a living word unless we live it out. And the thing is, living word is not just this. God is still speaking. God is still revealing to us right here in 2023. And I know that sounds crazy. I know that sounds weird because we got happy birthday balloons up in the sky being spied on right now. But God is still working and revealing and speaking and using each of us for a time such as this. To quote Barbara Brown Taylor, Christ taught his followers that there would be times when the fulfillment would go further than the word on the page, and that was the dangerous part. There would be times when the deepest possible obedience would look like disobedience to the keepers of tradition. We know that a bit, don't we? This dangerous teaching of Jesus, and equally our decision to follow, believe it, and live it, still reverberates in our life together. And it still fuels much of our fights within our Christian conversations and communities together. My friends, we are a community of faith shaped by, and might I insert, the living Spirit of Jesus Christ. Reminding you that Jesus was resurrected, that death did not hold him down. That means he's still working. He's still with us. He's still calling us. And to quote the Epistle James, he's asking us to show by our faith with our works. And maybe for some of us, our works might show that we need some seasoning. We need a little bit more salt. That we've lost the saltiness. We've lost some flavor. We've lost the ways that we should be. We've lost that, and we need to gain it back. We fell out of love with church and each other. We've fallen out of love with Christ. We've decided that justice was just too much of a work, that love was just not fun anymore, that mercy, I don't want to give it, and surely I'm not going to pass on grace. Maybe we've lost some salt, some flavor in who we are. And I think that's the beauty of the table. A few days after my call week, one of the team members at Emorywood went into the hospital to get checked up on because he had pneumonia. He checked out 2 days later with the diagnosis that he had liver and lung cancer. A few days after that, Rick passed away. Now, no pastor wants their last service as they're leaving to be a funeral of a dear friend. But Rick and I bonded a good bit on a lot of things. I often knew that every year for Christmas when I would give the staff ornaments and write a letter, that Rick did not want that at all. He did not care about that. So instead, my gift to Rick was that every month I would get 2 cases of the 36 count of Mountain Dew, because I always saw Rick with a Newport in one hand and a Mountain Dew in the other. One of the things that Rick and I bonded over was our dislike for church potlucks. There you go. Thank you, Steve. Now, Rick was just a picky eater, but I just don't trust everybody's cooking. I've seen enough episodes of Matlock and Law and Order to know how that goes down. And so my first church potluck, everyone was asking me to try this, and I didn't know the best way to say no thank you. And so I snuck outside, and I saw Rick under this big shade tree sitting on a bench, and found out that was Rick's secret hiding place. And it became mine as well. And Rick said, "Aren't you supposed to be in there?" And I said, "Aren't we supposed to be in there?" And I said, "Rick, I don't know what it is. Maybe it's just something about the seasoning in the dishes or something that just doesn't sit well with me." And Rick looked me dead in the eye and said, "Yeah, it ain't got none." It's fascinating that both of these elements cannot be what it is without salt. It's fascinating that you and me, we have to have a certain dosage of salt in order to live. And so we come to this table not filled with casseroles, not filled with a meat and 3, not filled with enchiladas. We come to this table with bread and wine to fulfill what we need to be salty in this world. So if we've been low on sodium, the table's for you. Even if you got enough, it helps to have a reminder the table is for you. So we come and we eat and we celebrate, we shout and we sing and we worship and we keep coming, so that when we go out into this world and we begin to lose pieces of our salt, we know that we can come right back here to get replenished. You are the salt of the earth. You are the ones that help purify, cleanse this world. You. So we come to the table. We are reminded on the night that Jesus was betrayed that he took his friends together. They sat down together. They shared stories with each other. And then Jesus broke the bread and he said, "This is my body broken for you, and many. Take and eat." And in the same way, he took the cup and he poured it out and said, "This is my blood for you and for many, the blood in the new covenant. Take and drink all of it." And in the same manner, as followers, as disciples right here today, we come and we eat and we drink, remembering our Savior.